And we're back on another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, where we have a casual and informal conversation about Star Trek. We're focused on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Still, we're on season 5, episode 10. Are you proud of me, Sean? Is that correct? Also,
yes, it is correct.
Okay.
It is correct. I love how you say "still."
Still.
Is this not over yet? I mean, seriously.
Well, I can't believe it. I mean, our 2 years. The podcast is like a little over 2 years old, so that's insane. And well, the audio and the video part of it. I don't know. What do you call the video portion? You just call it a vlogcast? No, vodcast, vodcast, vodcast.
It's on YouTube. I don't know. I don't care.
But it's not live. Only we did do our very first actual live episode last week. The doctor was on there, and Sean, you were on the text thread, and that was hella fun. I thought it was great. There were way more chat participants than I thought, and
yeah, you couldn't even see the thing.
I couldn't communicate with them. No, I know.
I have a formal complaint. I couldn't join the conversation, so I said I'll send some chat messages, for the first few minutes, just to drop some opinion, and you didn't even read the chat messages, and so my messages weren't included.
And I think I kind of told one of your ideas that you had because the other thing is we dropped the news before everyone else on YouTube about Picard because we happened to be doing a discussion, and the news came out at the end of our discussion.
Really?
No, actually, if you look at the time,
we were getting live live tweets.
Yeah, we were thanks to Text Trek, he was the first to attention, and then Sean brought it to my attention on the air. And what we're talking about, in case you don't know, or for posterity, is that was the second. There's 2 Captain Picard days in a year. One is the one that you get on the show, and then from now on, that Sunday is Captain Picard Day.
Well, that's Picard's back day because he's no longer.
Oh yeah, you're right. Captain Picard is back day. So, and yes, Doctor, you'll be pleased to know that the Empress is very excited about Captain Picard Day. That's all I got. I mean, about Captain Picard being back.
All right.
and yes. So we're here to talk about the episode New Ground, starring Brian Bonsall. I think this is his first appearance as Alexander Rozhenko.
Because do you recall what show he used to do?
Family Ties. How could I not?
Thank you. All right.
Yes. I watched every episode of Family Ties when I was a child. In fact, I went to school with a briefcase, and I wanted to be Alex P. Keaton in the 2nd grade, and I went to school wearing a briefcase, and I used to pretend I knew about the stock market and politics, which some might say I still pretend I know about politics and the stock market. So little has changed. But I was only a Republican. I was a Republican back then, and I switched parties in the 3rd grade. So I was smart enough to realize
in the 3rd grade.
that I needed to switch parties in the 3rd grade. So I've been a Democrat since the 3rd grate.
Did you vote in any elections while you were in the 2nd grade?
I always, pretended to vote. And then when I got old enough to realize that you have to be 18 to vote, I was like, oh, actually, I haven't voted in any elections. But I used to tell my little 2nd and 3rd grade friends that I'm voting today, even though I really wasn't.
Oh my God, that past Sohail must have been an amazing person.
He was actually a lot. That's Sohail. He was actually probably a lot like Alexander Rozhenko. This episode, although it may not get the rating you think, is a very personal episode for me because I could relate to Alexander Rozhenko because I was very angry for some reason. Also, when I was a little kid, and I used to tell lies, and I remember being admonished for it, and I never stole.
I remember the lying part.
Yeah. That's nothing. That's not the same thing. That's different. Those lies are in debate. Those lies are in dispute and debate. These are like actual lies. The lies you refer to are just things you don't believe. So that's a different thing. But no, and then I also got into a really bad situation with one of my teachers who I actually it became a drama. You didn't go to my elementary school, doctor, so I'm not going to name any names, but it became a drama, and like the teacher and I and I was like, I hate her. I don't want to be in this class. And I started crying. It was horrible, I remember. And it was just, so this triggered all those memories. It was a big deal.
Thank you for summarizing the episode for us.
And yes, there we go.
That's debatable.
Past Sohail, I like that. He's going to be a character from now on that comes on the show every now and then.
Oh God.
But Doctor, do you want to really summarize the episode, like what I left out about the Soliton Wave?
For the sake of brevity, I shall.
All right, very good.
Okay, so the Enterprise is tasked to observe this experiment involving a Soliton Wave, and during this experiment, Worf gets a communique from his adopted mother that she's bringing Alexander, his son, to the Enterprise, and she explains that he's having troubles assimilating back home, and they're getting a little too old for the rambunctious little Klingon, and so she drops him off, and Worf enrolls him in school, in various domestic situations occur where Alexander bullies kids and steals stuff, and basically everything you just said about you and your teacher saying, oh, she hates me and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the Enterprise is engaged in this observation of the Soliton Wave, and they launched the wave. The Enterprise is following this. It's kind of like a dummy ship, I guess, right? And the experiment goes awry, and the ship explodes, but the wave continues towards the destination, which is this colony on another planet. And they realize that the Soliton Wave is increasing in strength and will obliterate the planet if the Enterprise doesn't stop it. So the Enterprise overtakes the wave. The Enterprise actually goes through the wave at one point, doesn't it?
Right.
And
they have to, because it's, as the wave is getting faster, it's also getting bigger, and so they can't go around it or above it.
What are you showing us here? Is this
early? As you give the summary, I'm drawing something that this episode, another Past Sohail thing, but this is more like from middle school. This episode inspired a whole backstory or side story of Star Trek that you remember, Doctor.
All right, you created Soliton City.
Soliton City. So I'm drawing a picture of Soliton City right now as you talk. So anyways, go on.
Well, the Enterprise it has like 5 minutes to stop the wave before it destroys the station, and Alexander happens to be in this this zoo that the Enterprise happens to have for a little while, and he's injured. Well, no, there's an explosion. They have to get Alexander out, and Worf and Riker rush to get him out. Of course, they get him out in time. Picard says fire or something, and the wave is destroyed. And Worf and Alexander are in sickbay, and they kind of reconcile with each other, and Alexander can stay for the time being. And he doesn't appear again until 10 episodes later? I don't know. something like that.
Right. He's on the ship, but he's not like going to be a regular everyday character that we see. Not like Jake Cisco.
So the Soliton Wave is a failure, and so is this episode.
I agree.
And this is Soliton City, so this is the Soliton beam generator, which was invented from the Soliton technology, and it powers this incredible city that's a Federation colony as well. And then I have to find my original drawings, but I had some intricate original drawings of the invasion of Soliton City by the Romulans, and they destroy they destroy Soliton City brutally, and that was the backstory.
Oh no!
I think as young people who are into these fantasies, destruction is a very fun fun thing to imagine.
What was it exactly about the Soliton Wave that ignited such interest? Because I have to say, upon rewatching the episode,
how did this episode spark any interest whatsoever?
The Soliton Wave is very disappointing.
I actually just thought the name Soliton was cool. Like, I thought that they did a great job with naming it. But also I actually did pick up on the whole and enjoyed the idea that the Soliton technology was a way to do warp drive without an engine. You know, it was just like kind of like you would have warp ships that sailed on this wave it's a pretty deep sci-fi concept. If you think about it, it may not be executed as like amazingly as they could have, but within their scope and budget, I think they did a pretty good job with that. I think what actually does ruin this episode for people is the whole Alexander subplot, and so they're not really paying attention, or you don't remember that there's this whole other thing with the technology stuff. So that really appealed to me, and I just liked the idea of an energy source. So I turned it into a beam. I thought, well, the Soliton Wave failed, but what if they create like a beam to power, and they launch this like Soliton beam to power whole cities, and now my imagination would go to whole planets. But as a kid, I thought like, ooh, you could power a whole city with it. But yeah, it's just a cool name. It really appealed to me.
I hope the CG looked better in your Soliton City than in this episode.
Well, they're in my drawing style. By the way, I'm drinking my water, my fizzy water that you can see here out of a Star Trek glass. I don't know if you can see the symbol. So cheers to you guys. But yeah, I guess outside the this episode's not one that I've rewatched since it was on DVD. Even though I love the concept, it's like I gained what I wanted, from it, and then I moved on. That being said, watching it this time around, I did take some notes. I talked about my personal life, which I wanted to get out of the way, and then I talked about Soliton City more, which was more personal. So aside from those things kind of resonating, what I kind of clued into was like how the episode tried to kind of get your emotions by making you think that Worf is a bad dad, but he's actually but when I was watching, I was like, I think he's actually a really good dad. What do you guys think? Do you care?
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. The only thing that I find interesting in this episode is Deanna Troi and her relationship with Worf, and the dynamic that they start creating. Because down the line, well, we know that. I mean, some people are against the fact that they got together technically at the end of the 7th season.
I love it.
I love it too. But even before that, there's a situation where Worf asks Deanna Troi to take care of Alexander if ever something were to happen to him. And I think that this episode starts laying the work on that. And that's what I find interesting in this episode. Other than that, I don't know.
Well, that scene's pretty good. That scene is pretty good where she's kind of trying to get him to confront his own anger and kind of so they can relate to his son.
Every Deanna, like every Troi Worf scene in this episode is good. But then the Alexander and Worf, and I never got the feeling that Worf was the bad guy in this situation, nor really Alexander. They're just two different people acting kind of, I don't know, out of place.
My son is a liar.
Yeah, it's kind of there's an awkward execution to the story that they wanted to tell.
Didn't Julie Taylor write this episode? Did anyone look it up? I'm just going by
Jerry Taylor.
Jerry Taylor. Oh my god!
Wow.
Poor Jerry Taylor. The first time we mentioned her, I thought she was a man, and then
you slam her novelization.
I did. I'm sorry.
Episodes in a row.
I prejudged the novelization. It's true. We're so sorry, Jerry Taylor. We actually love you on the show.
Story by Sarah and Stuart Chano, and teleplay by Grant Rosenberg.
Oh, okay. I like how you say teleplay.
Teleplay?
Yeah. Teleplay. It's very British. I also, so another thing,
screenplay, right? Same thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think what I liked about this episode too, where this time around watching it, is I kind of focused in on, again, off the high of Captain Picard is back. I was watching Picard more, and I like the scene where, he's going in to give a briefing. Worf is going in to give a briefing to Picard, and they keep getting interrupted. And then finally he just kind of like sighs and he's like, "You're not the first crew member to have a child, Mr. Worf. But he goes, go and take care of your business."
Just shoos him away.
I actually hated that scene.
What? Why? He's like,
because
what?
It doesn't make any sense. I think in the future we would. I didn't understand the interruptions.
I agree.
And even today, there we go. It's in your notes.
I have it in my notes. I have in my notes written: are there no on-duty communicator blocking systems in place?
Yeah,
he should be on duty. You can't call the dude on duty unless it's like a medical emergency. His son has broken his leg or something.
All right.
Can't they just send an email?
Okay.
I mean, we have emails. We have a way of communicating that doesn't interrupt your daily.
You guys are not. You guys are ignoring one
voice message.
You guys are ignoring one important thing, and soon, Sean, like in about 5, maybe 6 years, you'll actually understand it. But for a parent, the phone is always on, so to speak, and you might want to. It doesn't matter.
No, like, but that's not what we're saying. We're saying, yeah.
No, it's
there
the same thing.
Be a system.
The computer, there is a system. The computer has a protocol. It recognizes that Alexander, his son, is aboard the ship. So a message from his teacher and a message from his doctor, which were the two messages, come priority through and go, because it could be like the kid's dying.
I call bullshit. They did
100%. No, 100%.
Yeah. That is
100%. It's bullshit, but it makes sense. I asked.
So then everybody's comment going off all the time.
Remember this. Remember this conversation now. When we talk about this in future episodes, where people get interrupted for no good reason on duty about shenanigans.
Why isn't O'Brien's comm going off all the time that hey, the baby is crying and nobody can, we don't know why, it's got a fever. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Maybe Worf forgot to turn on Do Not Disturb on his settings before he went into the meeting. So it's Worf's fault. You might have to do things like say, maybe he forgot to put it on the calendar. He looked a little flustered. He was late to the meeting.
Okay.
Wait, Picard was waiting for him. Worf was late to the meeting.
So why didn't he get a thing when he's in the meeting saying Captain Picard is waiting for you?
He might have, and he rushed up there. He may have gotten one. It's just not on screen.
Okay, I think these guys didn't know. I think these guys back in the day when they were writing TNG, they didn't have an idea of how cell phones would impact our lives and how like intrusive they could be, and so they didn't have like an idea of, I don't know, putting it on vibrate, putting it on silence, receiving emails all the time. So for them, it was just, we need a way to communicate on the ship, and everyone can communicate all the time. Anyway, the onboard communicating system on Enterprise is broken if you think about it, because there's no way the computer's going to know who you're going to call, when you're going to call them. Because sometimes they just, do data, come down to engineering, and it's like, how did the computer know? I don't know.
I'm sure we could get a computer expert on here.
No, you're
wrong. If there are any computer experts in the audience, please reach out or comment below over here and let us know.
Those comments, man. Otherwise, Riker would have his comm like on all the time, like do not disturb, because he's shagging, the ensign.
He would have two.
He would have two. He would have
right? Two. One for the shags and one for the duty, right?
Oh, exactly. Boy. So come on, man.
Like two beepers. Riker's a pimp. He has two beepers.
He's got one on his belt.
Oh my goodness!
It lights up and everything.
This is like a preamble for our TOS discussions. You just reminded me of something with the belt thing. But in the TOS episode, Charlie X, there's a scene. If we remember this, Doctor, we'll talk about this. There's a scene where Captain Kirk is talking to Charlie, and he's wearing his yellow standard command duty uniform tunic, and they're called to the bridge, and Charlie joins him, and apparently he has time to go to his quarters and change into his green tunic, because when he comes out of the the turbolift, he's wearing the green tunic, but the scene seems like it's like, continuous. So it's going to be fun picking apart TOS when we get there.
Well, I suppose Captain Kirk has like a change of uniforms on him at all time, just in case he gets ripped, right?
Charlie, would you help me tie this knot?
Oh my.
Oh my, indeed. Alexander was born on the 43rd day of Moktek and stardate 43205, and Worf did not know his
That is the coldest transition I've ever heard. Just talking about Kirk's shirt and go ahead, sorry.
Do you think that's plausible? I thought it was sad. Okay, no comment from the.
I thought it was sad.
Let's see what else do I have in my notes here.
I'm sorry, just to attack the episode more. Just the scene where the teacher is asking for like basic questions that are probably in the kid's profile anyhow. I didn't understand very much. Like, oh, when's your birthday? It's right there on the screen, I'm sure. I mean, that kind of information is standard even now, in the school system. Like you bring up, even I can look up the birthday of a kid.
I'm sure Alexander is chipped like every Federation citizen.
There were just a lot of situations in this episode that I think were contrived to make Worf look like a bad dad, I guess.
Dad.
And then, I have to be honest, the whole idea of the Galaxy class starship, isn't it to allow for officers and crewmen to have their families aboard the ship? That's the whole point of the Galaxy class starship. So why did Worf not want Alexander there in the first place?
Maybe he is a bad dad. Like maybe he's like,
so he doesn't. My impression is that Worf just never really wanted this kid around him to begin with.
Well, he admits to Counselor. Well, to be fair to Worf, he essentially admits to Counselor Troi that he's been upset or angry this whole time at K'Ehleyr for dying, and so I think he sees Alexander as like a reminder of K'Ehleyr. And plus she also didn't tell him about Alexander. It was like she kind of pulled a David situation on Worf, and so it must have been like kind of hard for him to deal with that too. So I think that's legitimate. Like I do agree that I think the show does try to convince us that Worf is a bad dad, but I think he's just a hurt dad, which is a little bit different than a bad dad. So
well, but let's compare that to how Worf was with that kid back in season 2.
That's true. That is an anomaly where he basically told the other kid, yeah, like he he didn't want his own kid to live with him, but he bonded with the other kid and became his like.
I don't think these. My opinion is that most of these Alexander episodes don't paint Worf in a very positive light. To be fair, you know, they just they either go for that he's like this, you know, stuffy Klingon who can't relate kind of thing, which and more to the point, I don't even know why we have this kind of melodrama Next Generation to begin with. I mean, it's just not the kind of story I'm interested in. Really, it's not very well acted by either Dorn or the kid actor, and I just don't believe it. I just don't. I don't know. I just don't buy it. Like, you know, I think Worf would have just left the kid with his grandparents. The whole contrivance that, oh, we're getting older, you know, even Worf doesn't believe it. So I just that whole subplot just seemed.
Well, that was the plot. That wasn't even the subplot. That's what hurts.
That was right. That's true. That was the main plot. The subplot was the Soliton
Wave.
Soliton Wave. But I didn't enjoy it at all. Really, I think Worf is better used in episodes where he's, you know, involved in the Klingon intrigue of his father, and, you know, the Kittimer thing, and getting disgraced, and trying to find his place, you know.
In all fairness, they do manage to kind of make his son interesting later on. Like in season 7, they have this episode where his son's time traveling, comes back to the past.
I remember that one,
and that's an interesting episode. Not only is the twist kind of you know, surprising for the first time you watch the episode, but the episode is good in itself, and it has a lot of those Klingon vibes that you get from, you know, Worf's father, etc., and that transition into his son. Whereas these episodes are very much just a Klingon kid trying to adapt to like life on the Enterprise or life on Earth, and life with his father that isn't really his father. He has to learn how to be his father.
We do get a little bit of Klingon lore in this episode. We learn a little bit more about Kalis and his brother Moroth.
Yeah, so this is the first time they mentioned Kalis since the original series.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Because and they didn't even say it right, because, well, the two of them say Kalis.
He says Kalis.
But even Worf says Kalis later on in the elevator, in the turbo lift.
How did they say it in the original series?
They say Kalis. They
do say Kalis.
And then in Discovery they say Kalis.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Which, oh, by the way, I also fun fact about Discovery, I didn't realize that Joe Menosky actually is an executive producer on the show as well as a writer. So anyways, go on.
No, well, okay, second thing about Discovery, we talk about the Corvin Gilvos in this episode. This is the first time we see the Corvin Gilvos, which are those kind of branch creature thingies that...
Oh my gosh,
Alexander
I didn't even make that
fire.
connection.
So, and they say that the Corvin Gilvos, the Gilvo is like an endangered species because Corvin 2 is, you know, undergoing some industrial pollution or something, victim of industrial pollution. And that is the one colony we see in Discovery that apparently provides...
It's a mine. It's a dilithium mine.
It's 80% of the Federation's dilithium. It's ridiculous. But apparently that colony is overpolluted, and so that was a nice tie-in to Discovery. I mean, these guys know how to tie in canon. They know how to do it.
I would say that
they choose not to.
It's a nice tie-in from Discovery to TNG, not the other way around. So, but we're just discovering it, which is exciting. We're discovering. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Star Trek Discovery is helping us to discover things.
I mentioned it in my video. My video, I think, in my episode 4 video.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, my review.
Yes.
But yeah. But it is nice to see that they did talk about industrial pollution in this TNG episode, and then so going back to Discovery, which is, I don't know, what is it, 200 years before? 200 years prior, maybe 100.
It would no. It would only be like
about 100.
100 and maybe 7 or something like that. It's not that far behind. But
yeah.
I guess the other tie into Discovery is that here's a situation where you see the Federation is actively engaged in finding alternate technologies to warp drive. So, again, like a lot of people think the spore drive is ridiculous, and they're like, why would it, take place? Why would that technology be there? Well, I've always said maybe the spore drive is a failed technology, kind of like the Soliton Wave is. Like, maybe it doesn't actually become anything, or who knows? One of the weird ideas that I had was that maybe Captain Picard stumbles upon the information about the Discovery, and using his knowledge of, maybe he's an archaeologist, and using his knowledge of the Iconian technology that he witnessed and saw, because in a cool video that the real Ketwalski Nick did, he points out that there's like something that looks like spores in the special effects for that episode. So who knows, he might actually be able to create a new way of traveling, and that could be a nice way to like continue to tie Discovery into the whole universe.
Let me ask the two of you a question. I mean, I don't think either of the storylines were well executed in the episode, but I'd like to know, what kind of storyline do you guys prefer to see on Next Generation, just in general? I mean, do you prefer the type that are like the Soliton Wave one, where it's more, a problem presents itself and the Enterprise crew has to solve it, and it's more science fiction, I guess, in nature, or the melodrama of, Worf's son arrives on the ship and the relationships, or I don't know, Troi's mother shows up, and how she relates to her, like all that kind of stuff. Like, which do you?
It's not one or the other for me. I think I like to see. I like a show that offers a variety of different ways of telling a story and a variety of different styles of telling that story. I actually think that's what I prefer. Like, I don't want a show that's just always the same thing.
Do you have a preference for one or the other?
Yeah,
which do you think Next Generation? Which do you think suits Next Generation better?
I think they're always doing their best when they are doing an episode where we discover something new, like, the exploration type episodes.
Okay.
I prefer the episodes which are about science and discoveries and that kind of stuff. And they're the ones that stand out to me. They're the ones that you remember. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you want to do kind of character relationships, that kind of stuff, it's better to do it in a situation where they're already like the inner light. We're talking about an episode that it really does deal with family issues and that kind of stuff, but I don't know, there's interpersonal relationships, but it's in the context of an amazing concept. It's in the context of like a far-fetched idea like Darmok.
Correct.
So that's really the best of both worlds. Whereas this is kind of not.
Mm-hmm.
This episode wasn't exactly the best of both worlds.
I think that this episode and others like it do help when you look at Star Trek as a whole. Like, I don't particularly like line this episode up for for when I'm in the mood to rewatch an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. But there are things about it that I remember when I think of some of the greater moments, and like it all helps to kind of like enrich the backstory of these characters. And I think that like this is an episode that does kind of touch on Worf's character, and it is touching at the end when he after Alexander is recovering in sickbay, and he kind of says like, there's a greater challenge, and we could face it together. And the fact that he comes around to the correct decision, and it, and you could tell that that's very meaningful to Alexander, and that part's acted, I thought, really well. I do agree that there are times where like both Michael Dorn and Alexander and Barn Bonsall are stiff in their performance, but I wonder if that wasn't I don't think either of those actors are bad actors, so I wonder if that wasn't just a choice gone wrong. Like maybe they thought this is a good way to play awkward with each other, but it doesn't translate to that. You know what I mean? Like I don't think it's that they're bad performance, but maybe bad performance, bad choices in that moment. Because again, that scene in sickbay I thought is acted pretty nicely. Yeah, but
scene.
Yeah, it's really nice.
That's the one scene that you remember and that has any sort of impact between them both. Yeah, it's not when Worf is telling him off, telling him about Klingon honor and how he disgraces, you disgrace yourself, you disgrace me, you disgrace your family, whatever. It is that one last moment where he says the greatest challenge.
It takes all that to kind of make that meaningful, though, because like to have like.
I agree that on like generally speaking, these kind of moments for any kind of TV series are necessary. Just to as you say, add to the characters and create the characters and like kind of flesh them out more. But maybe when you get an episode like this, which kind of just doubles down on that, and the subplot isn't as interesting as we would have wanted it to be, or isn't executed as well as we wanted it to be, that's maybe where it just gets dragged down.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that I think we all probably will come to the same kind of this kind of qualm is like, okay, so you do get this like touching moment and then you don't see Alexander again for like 10 episodes or whatever, whatever the doctor said. It's like, well,
I don't know if it's really 10 episodes.
Yeah, but like, but I'm just saying, like, I do agree that you don't see Alexander enough, and it's like you're making this like the whole thing feels like an episode to introduce this new character into the mix, and it doesn't happen. By the way, Doctor, did you know
that happens with a lot of characters in TNG? Like Ensign Rowe, they do the same thing. They have this whole thing about Ensign Rowe, and then they kind of just
forget about it
for a while. Yeah, it's like
it's been 3 episodes, right? 4 episodes.
She's on the crew somewhere. We know she's on the ship. She's part of the crew, but part of the ship, part of the crew.
And I think in this way, DS9 that's why it was such a kind of like amazing show, is because especially in the later seasons, it's just like literally the story just keeps going for like a whole season, or half a season, and you really feel that satisfaction and stuff like that. And I think that like I think that people who love TNG and praise it so much as like the ultimate Star Trek, including myself, have to also
rewatched it in a while.
Well, I think they also have to remember that that's probably a lot of your sentiment, because I was a kid when I watched Next Generation, so of course it's gonna have like this huge like place in my heart. So it's not without flaw.
So Alexander Rozhenko,
oh my god, I got Humbert to sit up again.
Alexander Rozhenko popped up. So this was episode 10. He pops up in Ethics, which is episode 16. So 6 episodes later.
I was close.
Yeah.
And then he appears in episode 20 and episode 22, and that's it for season 5. So he does 4 episodes in season 5.
And there's 24, so that's not a lot of episodes. But the thing is that I think they were already. I think also, if I recall correctly, the producers were kind of like not sure what to do with a kid, because I mean, at the same time, it could get really like frustrating if you have too many episodes with Alexander in it as well.
Well, I mean, this is the second kid on the show, really. I mean, we had Wesley, who was an older kid.
Yeah.
To be fair, but still, you had the mother-daughter mother-son relationship going on there. And now, it seems like we're setting up a father-son relationship. Do you guys think that Alexander would have worked better as a character if they'd had him on more often? If he would have been more of a regular fixture on the cast like Wesley was early on?
Maybe this was just practice run for what they did with Cisco and Jake later on.
That's a good observation. Yeah.
because
I would say so.
The practice run was Wesley and Beverly, and I mean, okay, people think what they think about Beverly, people think what they think about Wesley. Their dynamic together, I think, never really worked.
Really? I think the opposite.
Really? Okay. I don't know.
I felt the love.
Well, they're hardly together. I mean, they're really only together in the first season.
They've only got these awkward moments where, like, he's got some sort of science project. I think the dynamic between Wesley and Riker works a lot better.
Absolutely.
So
I liked
that's
it
my
because
take. But
I kind of think that that's realistic because when I was a teenager, I didn't really want to be around my parents. You know what I mean? Like, so I feel like, and you do see Dr. Crusher kind of dealing with that. I forget, you know, what episode it was in, but like where she's like, I wish my son would talk to me. You know, it was like one of these type of moments. So
that's one of the episodes where he comes back from like the academy or something, and he's on shore leave or something.
Yeah.
No. Oh, maybe. I don't know. I can't tell. It's all blur in my mind now. It's a blur in my mind.
Anyways, that never really worked for me, and so I think this father-son relationship doesn't really work as well. This kind of parenthood story doesn't really work until we eventually get to the Cisco's. The Cisco's really does work. He's hands down the best father in Deep Space Nine. And
absolutely.
from the get go, I'm rewatching Deep Space Nine, and my wife is watching it for the first time with me. We've just finished season 2, and every time there's like a parenting moment between them both, she's just sitting there nodding, agreeing with everything that Cisco has to say to his son. So
that's kind of awesome. I thought that something else I wrote here in my notes that we haven't talked about was I thought it was interesting the holodeck scene, how it was on level novice, and like I thought what was weird is like Worf is a Klingon, but he was doing a very like human, like, you know, like, yeah, get him, you know, like this whole like, you know, prize fighter motion. So I thought that was kind of funny, and Star Trek does do that a lot. Worf, I don't think Worf is as alien as he could be. I don't think any of the principal alien races are as alien as they could be. I would like to see, like, I don't mind that kind of correction in future Star Trek series, even though it's like one of the tropes that we're used to seeing. The other thing that I have here in my notes is that they did the classic, like, everyone gets thrown across the bridge thing in this
Some
episode.
Good ones in this episode, yeah.
They give us a big one there.
Yeah,
because like Dad is the only one that I noticed that Dad was the only one that left hanging on his console. Everyone else just threw themselves to the ground. That was awesome.
No, the other helmsman is kind of like grabbing on like for dear life, and I thought she was actually gonna go over it, which was really funny. So I wrote that down because there's not much in this episode, so you pay attention to like the really little kind of things.
Sums it up there.
Which is why the Soliton Wave I was probably like, oh god, father-son relationship. Oh my god. Oh, Soliton Wave. The scene where Alexander is trapped under the beam, I thought was worth note and discussion, because it dealt with something that we hear about kind of all the time, whereas like a parent will get super strength all of a sudden when they need to save their kid. Because at first Worf can't really lift the beam, and even with Riker's help, he can't do it. But then things are getting dire. The clock is ticking. Riker goes, oh, by the way, they had 3 minutes, and it was like a 10-minute scene. So that was like a little weird too. But anyways, Riker goes off to try to get, I don't know what he's gonna get to like help with the situation, but then Worf can't wait anymore, and he like actually lifts the thing and like tosses it aside. And I wondered if you guys noticed that or had any opinions.
In those situations, can't they use the phaser or something and melt? I don't know. Like, I just feel like there's technology that they could use.
They could just transport him out.
They established in the episode that there was some kind of ion because they were too close to the Soliton Wave, so they couldn't actually use the transporter or the
convenience.
Yeah, so that's why they had to run down there in the first place. But yeah,
like,
well, the other thing is that weird thing is like they show you where Alexander is on the ship, and the whole section is covered in red, but they're able to just go into the hallway and they're safe there. So that was like, they're like not really that. It's not like they ran to a whole different section of the ship. They just like went into the hallway and that's safe. So that was a little weird too.
It's the safe hallway. Yeah,
I do have some explanations for it, but it's a stretch. So
I do like they talk about how like the fire safety has been disabled or whatever, and that's why there's a fire, right? They mention that, but it is weird that there isn't more safety protocols in place, considering there's like endangered species in that lab. They mentioned there's only 14, not 1,400 or 14,000. There's 14 left on the planet, and they have 2 on the Enterprise, and that room can just burst into flames at any given moment, which is kind of, I mean, I'm not sure how people are going to react to that, but
yeah, the designers of the Galaxy class starship, I think, I don't know, they need to.
It looks comfortable. I mean, yeah,
very, but.
There are some interesting.
Not the triangle pillows. That they don't look comfortable.
By the way, I think today's Matt Jeffrey's birthday. If Twitter was telling me correct information, I'm not sure.
Wow.
But let me look it up. Let's see.
While you're looking that up, I'm gonna spotlight a book I have here.
Yes, I was hoping I was gonna ask about it.
Yeah, this is called A Field Guide to the Aliens of Star Trek: Next Generation. And it's by these are reminiscences of a kid from the time, and he was making a zine about Next Generation, and he would basically write about each of the aliens that would appear. So this is written. This is what he wrote about the Jadar, which is the alien.
I was going to ask, did he say anything about Jadar? That one random dude.
Yeah. So I'm going to read you a little bit of this. This is an ugly alien whose chin looks like a melted turtle shell.
Hold on. Stop reading for a second. Let me pull up the Jadar. Hold on.
No, the description is quite accurate.
By the way, today is Matt Jeffrey's, the anniversary of his birth. He passed away, so hold on. We're about to pull up this this Jadar here.
So we don't even know what race he's from. He's just Jadar.
Yeah. The home planet. He even has a little question mark next to the home planet.
So go ahead. And read.
So this is an ugly alien whose chin looks like a melted turtle shell. Based on the information, look how he zooms in. Based on the information from this episode, those are aliens who make bad science decisions because they are trying to invent warp wave technology, which seems like an incredibly dumb idea. They want to get rid of warp drives and just have ships ride waves of warp energy, which is great as long as you don't mind not being able to stop or change directions or control your movements in any way whatsoever. So that is The Gospel is written by Joshua Chapman, age 11, from A Field Guide to the Aliens of Star Trek Next Generation. A shout out to Zachary Auburn, who
wrote the book.
This together.
Or put it together.
Yeah.
Can you show us that cover, because you
There's
had
the cover right there.
You had the zines before, but now you have an actual a book, right?
Yeah, I bought one of the zines in the original zine format, and then he was very nice. I bought it and it didn't arrive, so I emailed him. I didn't realize this till a year later, and I emailed him a year later. I said, "Look, I know this sounds stupid, but I ordered your zines and they never arrived, and I just realized this. Is there anything you can do?" And he pointed out that, well, I've actually collected them in a really nice volume here. And if you're a Next Generation fan, I really I would highly recommend this. Look it up. I got it from a used bookstore.
Did you tell him we use it as a reference on the show?
I did. Actually,
nice.
I did. I meant to email you.
Good. Well, you'll have to send him this episode because we basically just gave him a plug. So everyone go.
Yeah, I will.
Everyone go. Everyone go and buy the book. That's awesome. It is very entertaining.
I want to buy it now. That was just an amazing quote. I love that.
There's some really hilarious ones here. A lot of them end up he ends up just talking crap about his mom. Like, my mom makes me do homework or something, and she's really, I just want to watch Star Trek. Yeah, it's really there's some hilarious ones.
Do we have anything from the other book by Larry Nemeczek about this episode? Because I think, unless you guys have notes, I think we're almost ready to wrap the show.
I think we're ready to wrap the show.
Yeah, I think we are.
I left the book all the way over there. I don't want to.
All right, I'm gonna go quickly to Memory Alpha because I do think there are some real quick facts. But go ahead and start your ratings. Oh, I should give mine first, right?
I did put in my notes something.
Oh, okay.
Which I read now, and it's very mean. But I wrote down, I feel like I should be more interested in the B plot. Because like this whole new technology kind of thing should be interesting, but I wasn't interested in it whatsoever. So
there was no effort. There was very little effort put into it. I mean, everything from the scientist who came up with it. He's very boring and ugly.
Melted turtle shell.
That's right. Yeah, they put more effort into the makeup of the melted turtle shell than they did into the
so much effort in his makeup.
But it's true. It's like you don't really know, and the episode is almost meta in the way, in the beginning when Geordi is all excited about it and he goes to Data and he's like, "Aren't you excited?" And Data's like,
Oh,
and
I
Worf
like that
is
line.
Kind of like,
he goes, "We're about to witness a moment in history," and he goes, every nanosecond is a moment in the space-time continuum," which I thought was really.
Don't you just roll your eyes when he says stuff like that?
Yeah, no, I love it. I think
it's on purpose. I mean,
he's an asshole.
Such a dick. He really is.
Data's not a dick. He doesn't have those emotions.
Oh, come on. He's doing that. He's doing that on purpose.
He's doing it on purpose.
He knows.
Dick.
He knows. He's trying to aggravate his friend, or the person that he's used to having with him.
LaForge states that watching the wave will be like being there to see Chuck Yeager break the sound barrier, or Zephram Cochrane engage the first warp drive.
Which is interesting which is awesome because then first contact happens.
Yeah.
And so I don't think they even remembered this episode when they made first contact.
Well, and then so the note says he is in fact present for the latter and actually participates in the flight itself. So it's kind of funny how that happened.
I don't think they remembered this episode when they were writing first contact. They probably had no idea it existed.
Throughout this episode, the name of Kahless the Unforgettable is mispronounced as Kahless. A mission report for this episode by John Sayers was published in the official Star Trek The Next Generation magazine. And the director remembered the father-son angle did that for me. Michael's normally in the position of having to feed lines to others on the bridge. Yeah, it's kind of true that he does get to be his own kind of character in this episode, which is nice. And that's it. There's nothing major in this in this at all.
So it's a pretty
give it a 3
episode. Oh God.
All right, hey, you went first. Now you'll never know what my true rating was because you're gonna think I'm lying.
I don't care what it is. You know what? I mean, I'm being generous with the 3.
Wow.
But because you know what, I have to admit I don't hate the episode. There are episodes I actively hate.
Yeah, it's true.
On Next Generation. So I reserve the 1s and the 2s for the ones I actually hate. This is just boring. It's they're. I think they just nobody. I don't know. They didn't try that hard with this episode. It just didn't cook very well. So I give it a 3.
I'm gonna give the episode a 4.
Okay.
And that's just because of the Soliton Wave.
Oh, yeah, I gave it a 4 as well. It's not an episode that I would like. If I'm doing a full TNG rewatch, then I will rewatch it with the others. I'm not gonna like skip it. Shades of Grey, I would skip.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. We hated Shades of Grey, didn't we, Doctor?
No, but I mean, you wouldn't skip it?
No, I wouldn't skip this one. I would watch it because it is like the return of Alexander. I don't know. It's got a few lines with Deanna that I enjoy. It's got those kind of beginnings where she has those moments with Worf, so I like that. I wouldn't skip it. It's just not a very interesting episode. At a time where they had to pump out 26 episodes per season and they were making them weekly, there's bound to be some crap ones. Yeah. And this didn't feel like a crap one. It just felt like one that like they were already interested in the next episode that they were writing. And so this one kind of just
which by the way,
let's just make it and then we'll
by the way, we're gonna continue this odd kind of thing. The next episode is Hero Worship, which is about a kid that thinks he's Data or thinks he's an android. If you guys recall that. So it's like that's 2 episodes in a row that we focus on a little kid. And again, so that's why TNG is interesting, because in syndication it goes out of order a lot of times, so you don't know, you may never have seen these episodes back to back in syndication. In current syndication, in the original airing, it did air one after the other. But I think that's interesting. So yeah,
so I wonder how much these kind of like having 2 or 3 of these episodes in a row, I wonder how much that actually hurt TNG as it was being released.
Well, I think there's a practical reason they do episodes like this where there's not a lot going on. It's more exposition, because it gives the whole team a break. Like, you don't have the budget to do like spectacular effects driven episodes every single time. Like we got, like the last episode, for example, which by the way, Doctor, you owe us a little addendum for the episode A Matter of Time, which is the last episode that we talked about. That episode seems like really production heavy. Like it had a lot of effects and things like that, and there was a lot of well, I like that episode, but yeah, you wanted to talk about the great Matt Fuhrer a little bit more.
Oh, I did to you.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about it.
No, like you said I should, but I didn't agree with you.
Oh, that's a shame.
I like him as an actor. I mean, I just I enjoyed the discussion you guys had. It was very good. It's very entertaining. The whole
future Sohail that actually ended up being past Sohail.
Yes, and there was great tension as to what the rating was going to be, and how many minutes the thing was going to. Yeah, that was great. That was pins and needles there. Yeah.
We can't do that on every episode of Starfleet Boy, but it has to be casual and informal. But that one I did throw a little extra.
What would you do? What would you even use to like in the same way for this episode? There's nothing going on in this episode.
I did. I talked about my childhood in the beginning. That was my moment, my Starfleet Boy moment for this episode. All right, so I guess the average is going to be like a 3.8.
Yeah.
It looks like we have some agreement over there. That's good. So
that pretty much sums up the episode. It's a 3.8.
3.8 future database person. Log this in the database.
Punch it in.
Punch it in, database person. Real quick before I let you guys off the hook here, have you guys heard any new news that seems legitimate about the Picard show? Like, what do you think? I think
the only legitimate news that's come out recently is it's not about the Picard show. It's about Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth pulling out of Star Trek 4.
Have you guys seen that? Out. No, I didn't see that.
Okay, so essentially what's happening is Pine and Hemsworth are now both part of, respectively, the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the DC Extended Universe. and they also have big careers going on with other movies, and so they're worth a lot of money. And considering Beyond was like considered a failure compared to Into Darkness, they've pulled the budget way down on that movie, and so they want like a smaller budget, but they want to bring back Hemsworth, which is now one of the biggest actors in Hollywood, and they want Pine, and they want all the others. So essentially, what's going on is apparently
what character? Sorry, go on.
He's Thor, but then Chris Pine. Pine is
he's
Kirk. He was well, he's Kirk, but Chris Pine is like what's I forgot his character's name. Trevor.
Steve Trevor in Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman's
but he dies.
boyfriend, but he dies.
No,
but
he's back and
he's confirmed in 1984, which is another debate entirely. But he's confirmed for the next movie. Anyway.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, but he's also been in A Wrinkle in Time. Wrinkle in Time was a terrible movie, but it still was a huge Disney production. Anyway, the deal is apparently they've been taking their they had agreed upon contracts, but then Paramount would have taken the pay grade down. They don't want to pay them as much, and so they're mad and they want to leave. That's the deal, and so everyone's freaking out and saying that they're going to leave and they're not going to be part of the next movie. I think it's all a plot and a ploy because this happens on a regular basis, where agents do it on purpose to make these kind of situations go public, so that then the studio has like pressure from the fan base and pressure from like the public, and so what they do is they just bump up the paychecks and then get them back, and then it's just a tactic to kind of upgrade their pay.
I see. Well,
so that's what I think, and that's what I think is going to happen in a few weeks' time, because the production was going to start, because they have the director, they have the script, they have everything in place, and the production was going to begin very soon. And so I think just before everything got underway and all the contracts and everything was signed correctly, they wanted to do some sort of, and it's a good thing to have them both do it at the same time, so that everyone freaks out, and then it makes a whole mess on the internet, which is what every friggin' Star Trek blog has been doing over this past few days.
I didn't even know about it, so I'm so bad at the internet, I guess.
Then again, I could be wrong. I could be wrong, and they could say we don't want to come back.
I think you're right. I think you're right, and there's actually precedent for it within Star Trek. The original crew, when they were doing their movies.
Oh well, yeah, I think William Shatner was always.
Shatner pulled it a couple of times, but interestingly enough, Sulu is the one who is most known, who's most well known for it. After Star Trek 3, I believe. No, I'm sorry. It was after Star Trek 4. So they were negotiating for Part 5, and George Takei did a film outside of the United States, and he was paid a lot more for it. And I think it's Prisoner of the Sun or Prisoners of the Sun. And he actually didn't realize he was worth that much. They paid him like an exorbitant amount compared to what he had been paid by Paramount, for all these years for Star Trek. So
$12.95. I'm just kidding.
Well, it's just kind of like, gosh, I can make this kind of money. Like it was very nice. And so, when it came time for Star Trek 5, he said, well, look, these guys just paid me this amount of money, and you guys want me to go back to that scale? That doesn't make any sense. I'm clearly worth this much because I made this film. It was Return to the Bridge in the River Kwai. That's what it was, believe it or not. There was a sequel to that movie, and George Takei was on it, and he got paid quite a bit of money for it. And so it hit, we didn't have the internet then, but it hit fan circles that George Takei might not come back for Sulu. And it actually took a couple of phone calls from, Chekhov and even Shatner himself to kind of, but
I need you, George. I need you there by my side.
Right, and tensions were already kind of fraught to begin with, but
the ship can't fly without you.
I can't. I need my helmsman.
You're not just ruining it for me, George. You're ruining it for everyone involved.
So I believe they did pony up.
The heck off my phone, Bill. I don't want to talk about this. You can speak to my lawyer. Hey,
there we go. I think that's a quote from the book. So there is precedent for this. So I'm very curious to see. I honestly I don't know. Chris Pine doesn't really have, his career is kind of interesting. He outside of Star Trek, I mean, what can we really say he's done that's been very popular that he actually owns? It's not much, I don't think. Because I mean, with Wonder Woman, obviously he's not the main character. He's just second fiddle, or maybe even third fiddle to
that is his big Hollywood movie. Other than that, I mean, I loved him in The Finest Hours,
which is a very, very good movie, but it did not do that well.
No, but I think he does smaller movies generally. Hell or High Water was awesome.
That's a fantastic film, and
see what I mean. But these aren't huge movies.
No,
but I mean, Jack Ryan, is that my imagination?
He was the last Jack. Well, now there's a new one, but yeah.
So I think he enjoys his career as that. He has a few big, franchises that he's linked to, and then he does just movies that interest him. Anyway, the two Chris's now, Chris Hemsworth and Chris Pine, are hugely bankable names.
Yes, they are. Yeah,
you have them both in the same movie, and then I mean, people do know about Star Trek, and even if it's not like the most mainstream of franchises in the movie industry, if you have Star Trek, and then you have Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth on the poster, you're gonna get a lot of money. Like, a lot of people are gonna watch that. Mm-hmm. And so I think they know. Paramount knows. They'll just pay them more. They'll just bump their paychecks. If even the rumors are true that they want to pay them less, because I don't really believe that. If they have an established contract, I don't see how Paramount would be able to back down on that, unless they have like a fine print that says, unless your last movie didn't make enough, we can kind of dumb down but I don't know.
Yeah, you're only as good as your last movie. Yeah.
But then movies are interesting because the backlash that Into Darkness got years after it came out, because initially people loved it, but they were all hypocrites and stupid. They were all hype because it was a bad movie. And then years later, everyone kind of agreed that it was a bad movie. That impacted Beyond as it came out. And so even though Beyond is better, Beyond made a lot less money, but that's because of Into Darkness. Same thing, Into Darkness is the most technically profitable Star Trek movie that there was, but that was because people pretty much enjoyed Star Trek 09, that thought it was a good way to reboot or revitalize the franchise.
Right.
So in the same way, Beyond was very good. I think, very good. Beyond was fun. I think people have high expectations for the next one, and if you put Pine, Hemsworth, anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going on. This whole thing will blow over in a couple of weeks, unless, of course, they just walk out, and then we'll only be left with Tarantino Trek. And if they do walk out, I'll tell you what. As much as I do want Pine and Hemsworth to be in this movie, and I do want this movie to happen, if it doesn't happen, then make it about Captain Sulu. Give us a John Cho Captain Sulu movie.
Wow.
Call it Sulu, a Star Trek story. No, just don't. But give us a Captain Sulu movie, and I would love that.
It would be actually really neat to see a Kelvinized Excelsior type vessel. I actually
not only that, but in the social climate that we exist in, like having this openly gay main cast lead, and he's Asian, like just the people would go crazy over that. They would love it.
Yeah. I think George Takei might feel a little upset because he's been wanting that film for like a long time for himself, but he might actually be able to be in it. Maybe
find a way to bring him in.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that'd be cool. Very cool. Okay, well, so we're ending the rumors and news portion of Starfleet Boy. And now we're gonna say goodbye. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. I'm sorry that the episode was not one of the more exciting ones, but I felt we got a good conversation going out of it. So that at least was worth the price of Soliton Waves. Anyways, live long and prosper. We'll see you next time.